Everyone's counting the Miami Dolphins out for 2025, but here's why they might be actually better than you think. Now, the Dolphins have not done themselves any favors in making anyone believe in them, so that I do understand. And there's some things that happened late last season and in the offseason that once again would reinforce why you might not believe in them. Obviously, the ugly ending to the season, failing to make the playoffs, losing to the Jets last week of the year, as well as losing some key veterans in free agency/retirement, and Teron Armstead, Jalen Ramsey likely being out the door, Calais Campbell, Javon Holland, Kendall Fuller. Like, the Dolphins have lost some talent, and in previous years, this Miami Dolphins team has had very little obvious holes on the roster. Like, for example, last year, you go into training camp, your cornerback position looks like Jalen Ramsey, Kendall Fuller, and Kader Kohu. There's not really any questions in who's going to be starting at that position, which on paper, it makes you feel good inside, where you don't kind of have any questions about the roster. But sometimes that can be a detriment to the team, because ultimately, in order for young talent to grow most of the times, obviously, ideally, they can grow while sitting on the sideline, but you don't know what you have until they're consistently playing on Sundays and taking those bumps and bruises to improve upon. So as much as it's nice to have that certainty, like, okay, Kendall Fuller's going to be our outside boundary. He's going to be a solid player. He's not going to be a cornerback for the next 7 years for us, but he's going to be a 1-year solid stopgap. Instead, the Dolphins are going upon this year with a lot of question marks upon the roster, specifically at cornerback, where it's going to be a lot of Cam Smith, Kader Kohu, Storm Duck, maybe an undrafted free agent surprises. But good teams have been able to implement this model of having question marks upon the roster while still having an overall solid team and being able to rely upon that. Once again, the Dolphins have not proven to be one of those good teams that you can trust them to do that, like the Chiefs, where they trade Trent McDuffie. They don't trade Trent McDuffie, but they got rid of L'Jarius Sneed. I believe they got rid of Travarius Ward. Like, they've turned over that position and have had young talent been able to rise to that occasion. Same thing with the 49ers, where they lose that talent. So good teams are able to have those questions on the roster and have those young guys be able to step up. Hungry dogs got to eat.
Hungry dogs run faster.
Where you don't have a complacent veteran who's showing up late and maybe not putting forth his best effort because he's already proven. When you have unproven guys that are battling every day to prove themselves, like, you're going to get the best out of them. So the Dolphins have some unproven spots on this roster, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But ultimately, their season's going to come down to how does that young talent play out. Same thing on the interior defensive line with Kenneth Grant and the other draft picks coming in. They're trying to replace Calais Campbell and Deshaun Hand, who had a good year for the Miami Dolphins last year. So once again, there is unproven talent, but sometimes that can be a good thing because you're going to get the best out of them. They're not going to be complacent veterans who are kind of being an impact on your culture. They're going to be the ones kind of helping drive that growth. Another reason why I think the Dolphins could be better in 2025 than they were last year is the culture shift. Now, I know culture shift is a buzzword. You kind of hear about every team year in, year out, new coaching change. But I will say, from what I've seen, like, it seems legit. Like, just from how the team's moving, how people are talking, and yeah, even just how they're going about their business, things do seem differently. The Dolphins have been a very exciting team that made a lot of noise in the offseason, just saying silly stuff, whether it was McDaniel, Tyreek, kind of just being just more loose, which is kind of McDaniel's thought about culture, but it's been kind of restricted in, like, yeah, we want you to be yourselves, but, like, you're not going to hurt this roster. Like, you're going to show up on time, you're going to put in your work, and if you're not, I'll see ya, or you're not going to play. So just from, like, how Tua's been talking, Jordan Brooks has been talking, Alec Ingold, like, legit leaders, like, not Tyreek Hill, who's a star player but not a leader, like Tua, Ingold, Jordan Brooks, like, those dudes are real deal human beings who, like, you can rely upon to instill a culture, and, like, you can just tell it's they're more serious, they're pissed off in a way, which is good. And obviously it sucks that it took to this point, and once again, words are words. We'll have to see how it shows up on Sundays, but I do actually believe that there's actual culture change in place. And I think, once again, that's part of the youth movement of, like, now you have these youth guys who don't know the history of, like, what's been going on these past few years. Like, they're coming in and there's this accountability among the leaders of this football team to, like, be hungry, be there early, work hard. So I think there's more accountability over kind of the flash. There's been less attention around this team, which I definitely think is a benefit. Attention in terms of expectations and attention in terms of what they're doing within the media. So I think that's good. I think overall this is McDaniel maturing, and this is the Dolphins' leadership maturing from the players top down, and I like that. And another culture shift is I've been a defender of Chris Grier. Most of his moves, because I think people overly nitpick him. Once again, every GM has their moments where they need to be better. But I will say a thing I was not defending, I immediately jumped on him for, was giving those new deals to Tyreek and Jalen Ramsey. I thought was malpractice. You're talking about guys with multiple years left on, and you're just throwing more guaranteed money for no reason. And it allows you to be less flexible. So now if we were to trade Jalen Ramsey, you are eating all this dead cap, where had you not done that and given him a new contract, like, you were more flexible to move off of him. Same thing with Tyreek. We have to wait till next year to move off of, where at the end of last year, he throws that child fit, you trade him. Like, it gave us a lot less maneuverability, despite not even needing to do it, because you probably wanted to just not piss them off. Where, like, the Dolphins, once again, it's bad it's happening to Jonnu, because Jonnu's a good dude, unlike the other two. But, like, the Dolphins are not running to just throw him money. Like, they're making it more difficult on Jonnu, which is kind of the culture and precedent you need to set in today's NFL, where, like, the Dolphins were starting to be known as a team that just throw money around. And once again, you want to be able to keep your talent, but you don't want to be reckless. And I think they were getting to the point of recklessness in those two deals. So I'm liking how they're approaching that. Now, in terms of just the state of the offense has always been the strength of Mike McDaniel's teams for the Miami Dolphins when Tua Tagovailoa has been available. And I still think that will continue to be the fact. And hopefully, if Tua is available, I believe this offense will be the engine of this football team. But I've heard McDaniel, and once again, words are words. I've had confidence that he knew the right approach to take to get over the hump of what these offenses in previous years have run into, which is like because when the Dolphins are bad against good teams, it's true. But why is that? The Dolphins have been able to take advantage of bad teams because it doesn't matter what the bad teams do. The Dolphins are able to still insert their way. But when they face the good teams take away what the Dolphins are good at, and the Dolphins aren't good enough at counterpunching to be able to make up for how the good teams are overplaying them. And basically, in the offensive side of the ball, teams are doing everything in their power to prevent the plays to the intermediate, deep parts of the field that the Dolphins were doing in the beginning of the Mike McDaniel era to really make them the number one offense for like that 10-week stretch. Hitting those deep sideline shots to Tyreek or Waddle, and then the middle part of the field where Tua absolute decimates teams. Teams are now just overplaying the hell out of that. I believe Mike McDaniel mentioned no offense faces defenses further back than the Dolphins, essentially. So in order to make up for that, you have to take advantage of that overplay and run the football down teams' throats. And the Dolphins have not been effective enough in running the football against those advantageous looks. So he's mentioned that, which means that hopefully that is his focus. If the Dolphins are able to be an effective physical running football team when teams want to sit in too high coverage and be 10 yards off, if they're able to effectively punish teams for doing that, this offense is going to be top 5 in football, period. Like, if they're able to make that change. And once again, Mike McDaniel in flashes has acknowledged it and has implemented that. I think back to the second Bills game where that game plan was beautiful. We ran for like 200 yards. At least it felt like it. We would have won that football game had Raheem Mostert not fumbled. Tua played a perfect brand of football, taking advantage of the overplay. That's how you're supposed to play football. It was a perfect game plan, but we've seen that, and then he's gone away from it. So if he sticks to his guns, is able to establish that run, and stick to it if teams don't want to change how they're playing us, then this offense is going to be extremely successful. We've basically had continuity amongst the core skill positions, so Tyreek, Waddle, Jonnu's back, Julian Hill's back, Devon Achane, Jalen Wright's back. Like, a lot of continuity amongst the skill positions. The O-line's had a bit of an overhaul, although I think if you were to compare the O-line from right now to last year, I think everyone would prefer it. We know we have an Aaron Brewer, which is an elite center. You actually obviously have the question mark at left tackle with Patrick Paul replacing Teron Armstead, although Teron Armstead, as good as he was when healthy, he was playing like 50% of the games overall in his Dolphins tenure. Austin Jackson should hopefully be healthy and is a very good right tackle in this scheme. And then you have 2 new guards, which once again seem like upgrades. So I would say the O-line's in a better spot. You have continued continuity amongst skill positions. So I have all the faith in this offense and McDaniel to finally make those changes. In terms of the defense the Dolphins essentially are putting a lot of trust in Anthony Weaver to implement his defense with less talent than he did last year. He's losing Calais Campbell. He's losing Jalen Ramsey and Javon Holland. So, like, he's losing a lot of talent, and they're trusting him to be able to make up for that. And where Anthony Weaver comes from, the Baltimore Ravens, they kind of are able to do that. They're able to churn positions and get good play out of players you don't expect, which is, once again, back to my initial point of, like, the youth movement. Like, the Dolphins are going to need Kenneth Grant to step up. They're going to need Storm Duck to step up. They're going to need Ife Melifonwu to stay healthy. They're probably going to need one of those safety draft picks between Patrick McMorris last year and the 2 late picks this year to step up. So it's something we're not used to having to rely upon as Dolphins fans, because you kind of, like, the Dolphins get their needs addressed in free agency, but, like, now you're like, all right, like, you have 3 safeties battling for one spot, let the best man win. And it's worked out for, like, teams like the Ravens in the past, and that's what the Dolphins are going to have to rely upon. But along with that, the Dolphins' defensive line is an absolute unit, specifically the edge group with Chop, Chubb, Jalen Phillips. Chop, Chubb, Jalen Phillips. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody, but, I mean, that rotation of 3 is nasty. You have Zach Sealer on the inside. Hopefully Kenneth Grant can hit the ground running. Our inside backer group is tremendous between Jordan Brooks, who was for my damn money, top 5 inside backer in football last year. You brought in Willie Gay. You have another run stopper they brought over from the Bucs, so I'm blanking on his name. But, like, I like the inside backer group a lot. And then, once again, you kind of have some question marks on the cornerback room. But the best teams typically invest in their D-line before investing in their corners. I think back to what the Rams did after Ramsey. A lot of their corners aren't the biggest names, but their D-line has just been so good that it kind of makes up for it. Now, once again, if you have bad corners, it's going to get exposed at some point or another, but the Dolphins are kind of relying about that young talent to step up. So overall, I think the Dolphins are going to be better than you think because this culture change, and I believe in what they're doing with this roster. They have less star power, but more hungry people that are going to be working their asses off to hit their goals and kind of do right by the team. So I think they're going to be better than people expect. They're relying upon the young talent, and I think that's kind of what's going to make or break this year. If that young talent is kind of how I'm interpreting it, it's like hungry dudes that are just putting in the time. They're kind of athletic but late draft picks that you're relying upon. Like, if they step up, this team's going to be good. So they're kind of going to ride with the young talent that they're relying upon. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's kind of the change teams need to do, especially when you start paying a quarterback, is you need to be able to rely on developing players, which is emphasis of Mike McDaniel. And when he hired Anthony Weaver, another big emphasis. So Cam Smith and guys like that are going to have to step up. And obviously, unfortunately, it sucks that you're relying on that for your season to go as you'd like, but it could be a benefit. So that's why, with the less expectations, relying on young, hungry talent, I think it could be a benefit and why the Dolphins are going to overperform your expectations. So comment your thoughts down below. Appreciate you guys for watching. Like and subscribe to help the channel grow. And until next time, fins up.